Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We are the hottest political show on AM radio anywhere in America today. And as I said the other day, the only thing that's predictable about Donald Trump is that he's completely and totally unpredictable. Just days ago, he said he would make a decision in 2 weeks as to what to do about the danger posed by Iran's development of a nuclear weapon. That's what's known in the business as a head fake, because on Sunday morning local time, the U.S. military conducted airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities in Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. In a historic address from the White House, President Trump called the operation a spectacular military success and claimed that Iran's key uranium enrichment sites have been completely and totally obliterated. Now, let me make it clear, as one of the founders of MAGA, I completely and totally support President Donald Trump. That's because this is not regime change. This is not boots on the ground. This is not an endless foreign war as those pursued by those who preceded him. This was a surgical strike to deal with a very specific problem. If one goes back and looks, President Donald Trump said during the campaign at least 15 times in formal speeches that he would not allow Iran to develop a nuclear bomb. I can't even count the number of times that he said it since becoming president of the United States. So those self-appointed leaders of MAGA, many of whom actually supported Ted Cruz for president, who have opposed this action, I would point out that they have neither access to the intelligence, nor do they have the burden that President Trump has in making this difficult, but in my view, correct decision. So I stand proudly with my president. The president said specifically, Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. It's interesting, the president still points out that he prefers negotiations over war. He prefers commerce over chaos. It's also interesting to me that in his press conference, he was flanked by Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. He has said, the president that is, this cannot continue. There will either be peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than what we've witnessed over the last 8 days. One of the things that has disturbed me, however, has been a systematic effort by the Neocons in this administration to undermine the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. They did this largely by distorting her congressional testimony, claiming falsely that she disagreed with the president's assessment as to whether Iran was developing a nuclear bomb. As she herself has requested, let's listen to the actual testimony of Tulsi Gabbard.
Iran continues to seek expansion of its influence in the Middle East, despite the degradation to its proxies and defenses during the Gaza conflict. Iran has developed and maintains ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and UAVs, including systems capable of striking U.S. targets and allies in the region. Tehran has shown a willingness to use these weapons, including during a 2020 attack on U.S. forces in Iraq and in attacks against Israel in April and October 2024. Iran's cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons. Iran will likely continue efforts to counter Israel and press for U.S. military withdrawal from the region by aiding, arming, and helping to reconstitute its loose consortium of like-minded terrorist and militant actors, which it refers to as its axis of resistance. Although weakened, this collection of actors still presents a wide range of threats, including to Israel's population, U.S. forces deployed in Iraq and Syria, and to U.S. and international military and commercial shipping and transit.
So there you see, did that sound like she said that Iran was not a danger? This is very much like the president saying that he was going to take 2 weeks to make a decision. She goes on to say that it would be only a matter of weeks before they could develop a nuclear bomb, just that they were not doing so according to the international inspections. So this is an effort to undermine Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is a four-term Democrat member of Congress. She's a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. She served in combat in both Iraq and Iran. And I think she's among the president's very best appointees. She is not a neocon, and there are those in this administration who are, and I think they sought to undermine her. The president's spokesman, Steve Chung, put out a statement yesterday saying that there was no difference between the president's position and that of his director of national intelligence. These are the kinds of games that go on in Washington, D.C. I saw them when I was there. Some critics have tried to undermine Tulsi Gabbard's position in this administration, but I think they have failed to do so. It is also interesting that the president warned the Iranians that the U.S. still has many targets left in Iran, and the military will take them out within minutes if peace with the Islamic Republic does not come quickly. Very shortly, Colonel John Mills, a national security professional with service in the Cold War, the peace dividend, the war on terror, and the world in chaos, former director of cybersecurity policy strategy and international affairs at the U.S. Department of Defense, will join us to tell us what is next in Iran. He's a senior fellow at the Center of Security Policy, and along with Colonel Douglas McGregor, he is my go-to guy when it comes to the analysis of geopolitical affairs. You don't want to miss that, so we'll be back with Colonel John Mills. And then a little bit later, Bill Pulte, the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, joins us to talk about why Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell refuses to cut interest rates on the American people, despite the fact that the inflation rate is almost exactly where it was the last time the Fed cut rates in an effort to boost the reelection of Joe Biden. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Wherever you do, please don't touch that dial, because we'll be right back with the hottest political news on the planet.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. As a political animal, I have to comment on the fact that former President Bill Clinton has announced his endorsement of former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary for mayor of the city of New York. I frankly think, as a political analyst, this is a very, very significant development. I understand the former president has taped a robocall to generate support for former Governor Cuomo. I think this could have a profound effect on the turnout, particularly among older voters. Bill Clinton remains one of the most respected figures in the Democrat Party. Here's what former President Clinton said about Andrew Cuomo. Quoting him, he said, "He's a fighter who knows how to make government work. And at a time when our basic rights are under assault, I know he will stand up and protect the people of this city." Clinton actually lives in Westchester County, but he very, very rarely weighs in on local races. I think his endorsement is another indication that many establishment Democrats prefer former Governor Cuomo to the socialist candidate, Zohan Mamdani. It's commentary on the change in the demographics of the New York Democrat Party that such a candidate can actually get traction. New York has this convoluted system where there is a Democrat primary, but then the candidates will face off in a ranked choice voting election for the final in November. It's very hard to explain in the time that we have here how exactly that works. Of course, current Mayor Eric Adams, now anathema in the Democrat Party because of the agreement between he and the Trump administration not to prosecute him for crimes for which he was indicted. There are 3 unsealed indictments of Eric Adams, which were never made public, all 3 of them sealed for, quote-unquote, national security purposes, which leads me to believe that those indictments do involve perhaps the illegal use of foreign money in his campaigns. That is, of course, speculation on my part. But this is a very, very significant endorsement. Also note that former Governor Cuomo was endorsed Friday by Representative Jim Clyburn, the highest ranking black member of Congress, has also been endorsed by the New York Daily News. I'm watching this race, well, largely because I am a political junkie, but I'm watching it very carefully. Here's some very good news. My great-grandson, who is 6 years old, lives only 12 miles away from East Palestine, Ohio. Since the tragic derailment of a train there and the willful decision to detonate toxic chemicals into the air, he continues to suffer from fever, nausea, rashes, diarrhea, migraines, and endless respiratory infections. It's interesting, when he and my granddaughter visit us here in Florida, almost all of those symptoms miraculously disappear. And as soon as he returns to Ohio, within days, those horrific symptoms return. The National Institute of Health has now announced that they will shell out $10 million over the next 5 years researching the long-term health ramifications of that 2023 train derailment that unleashed unprecedented amount of toxic chemicals into the air and water. Specifically, remember EPA officials under President Joe Biden insisting that the air and the water was safe. The air was safe to breathe. The water was safe to drink. But then when asked point blank whether he would allow his children to drink the water, this EPA official said no. Vice President J.D. Vance, who was a freshman senator from Ohio at the time, had pushed for more long-term research to better understand the health consequences of the spill, including those on children. The government's not living up to its responsibilities here. I think they will under this administration. We couldn't even get the truth under Joe Biden. Now this administration will work to protect the public health and to learn the truth about what actually happened. I think the people in the surrounding community deserve to know. The research will entail a multidisciplinary series of studies that will assess the biological markers of risk of victims of the spill, establish stronger public health tracking surveillance in the community, and ensure well-coordinated communications between researchers. All of that's great. In the meantime, there are multiple lawsuits against the Norfolk Southern Railroad that was transporting these hazardous chemicals such as vinyl chloride, benzene residue, butyl acrylate, and others, which derailed, leading to the toxic chemicals igniting. Authorities attempted to mitigate the damage through controlled burns. That only made things worse, leading to a big explosion and further catalyzing the release of these hazardous substances into the air, soil, and water. Secretary of Human Health and Services Robert Kennedy stressed the people of East Palestine have a right to clear, science-backed answers about the impact on their health. Officials plan to deliver the $10 million in funding in tranches of $2 million a year. The NIH is working to ensure the people of East Palestine and the surrounding communities are listened to, that they get the care they need and the answers they deserve. That was from a statement by NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya. Finally, my own family will get the assistance they need. This is just another example of the transparency of the Trump administration on this important issue. Coming up next, Colonel John Mills, who played a key role at the Department of Defense, is going to help us try to figure out what happens next in Iran. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Whatever you do, please don't touch that dial.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Choice Hotels get you more for your money so you can maximize any road trip. Like with the road trippers we see here in their natural habitat, the breakfast area at a Comfort Inn. Here's a dad teaching his son how to make waffles, fluffy golden waffles. There's a mom making sure her daughter eats some fruit to avoid the "I'm hungry" from the back seat. And a sibling standoff over the last muffin. This is the cycle of vacation maximizationing in all its glory. Check into more. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
This episode is brought to you by Max. The HBO original comedy special, Gerard Carmichael, Don't Be Gay, is now streaming on Max. Emmy-winning comedian Gerard Carmichael returns to the stage in his boldest special yet, bringing his sharp wit, unfiltered honesty, and the kind of vulnerability that's made his voice truly one of a kind. Don't miss Gerard Carmichael, Don't Be Gay. Now streaming on Max.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Joining me now is Colonel John Mills. Colonel Mills is the author of two great books, The Nation Will Follow and The war against the deep state. He's a former director of cybersecurity policy, strategy, and international affairs at the U.S. Department of Defense, and he's served his country in 4 separate eras: the Cold War, the peace dividend, the war on terror, the war in chaos, and now the great power showdown. I'm always gratified to have his opinion. He's one of the great geopolitical military thinkers in the country today. I'm hopeful that he will soon join this administration, but Colonel Mills, as always, we are honored to have you.
Roger, thank you. Absolutely, always an honor to be on your show.
So there's so many questions here, it's hard to know where to start, but let's start at the beginning. President Trump, in his remarks last night from the White House, standing astride the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State, announced that this strike, or these strikes, I should say, were completely successful. I read many various opinions of so-called military experts as to whether these 30,000-pound bunker-busting bobs could, in fact, take out the Iranian capability, particularly at Fordow. Do you think that the mission yesterday was successful?
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, so the president, and then following up this morning, Secretary of Defense Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, went over it. This strike was all about the objectives of knocking out 3 Iranian nuclear sites. It appears to have essentially destroyed them. So this was not about regime change. This was not about bringing an end to Iran's role as a Chinese proxy. It was solely about essentially taking Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan out of the nuclear process for Iran. Because even back to 2016, Donald J. Trump was always very clear Iran was not to have nuclear capability. So, yes, I think it accomplished its mission. Now, people are worried about this or that. Everything else is out of scope. The president was extremely clear this was about taking those 3 facilities out of the equation. Those 3 facilities are out of the equation.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. There are some in the MAGA movement. Oddly enough, those are those MAGA members who weren't for Donald Trump. They were for Ted Cruz in 2016. Those MAGA members who are second-guessing the president. But very clearly, this is not about regime change. It's not about boots on the ground. It's not about endless foreign war where our objectives were never actually clear, or where we were lied to about the facts on the ground. I speak, of course, about the war in Iraq, where we were falsely told that the Iraqis had weapons of mass destruction. That was a lie. And we were actually led to believe that Iraq played some role in the attacks on America on 9/11. Another lie. 2 lies generated by Vice President Dick Cheney, just in case anybody's forgotten that. I think the facts here were absolutely clear, but I guess the real question for most Americans is what comes next. When I first heard that basically the Minister of Information was very angry and said that there would be consequences, I said to my seatmate flying back from New Orleans on a plane, why is that guy even still able to speak? I guess that this was a much more narrow operation. And the president, who clearly prefers negotiations over confrontation, yet again called on the Iranians, now that they've taken this attack, to come back to the table and try to negotiate peacefully. He's also made it pretty clear that if they don't do so, he's prepared to act again. I think they'll take him a bit more seriously this time. I guess, Colonel Mills, The OPSEC on this really was extraordinary. By that I mean the operational secrecy, no?
It was remarkable. It was well done. It's just a very small core group of planners were involved. Now, Saturday, I was focused on doing a framing for a concrete pour and also doing a quick concrete patch. That was my focus. But everybody was obsessing over B-2s headed for Guam. There's now, I would say, a Donald J. Trump annex or addendum to Sun Tzu's Art of War. Watching bombers in the West, always be careful of bombers coming from the East. So I think Donald J. Trump has just added an annex to the historic chronicles of Sun Tzu and the Art of War. It was brilliant. Deception, very few, great operational security, few knew about it. Everybody was distracted. Including the Chinese, which, this really, the big loser in all of this are the Chinese, because Iran, they buy 100% of Iran's oil, and Iran depends on that cash for survival. But, it's priced in renminbi, so the Iranians have to spend all the money they receive at the Chinese company store. That's the only place they can spend it. So Iran is a proxy of China for terror, for mayhem, for war production, for oil. And this is the real story of the situation.
Yeah, I want to come back to that in just a moment. As we assess what the options for Iran are, my greatest concern, of course, are the number of illegals inside the United States and the potential that we have sleeper cells here that could be activated. Let's listen to Vice President J.D. Vance on that subject.
How concerned is the administration or Iranian proxies could carry out a terrorist attack inside the United States?
Well, unfortunately, Kristen, we know that a lot of people who we don't have full accounting of were let in over the last 4 years under the Biden administration. We know that some of those people were on terrorism watch lists. We feel very confident in our FBI and law enforcement that we're on top of this situation. But yeah, we're looking at this very closely. We're doing everything that we can to keep our people safe. And this is one of the reasons why border security is national security, is if you let a bunch of crazy people into your country, those crazy people can eventually take action. We're going to do everything that we can to make sure that doesn't happen and to keep Americans safe.
So first, let's start locally, Colonel Mills. What do you think the odds are that we will see ballistic missiles and drone attacks on U.S. bases within the Middle East? And what are the odds that some of those missiles and drones get through our defense systems?
Well, as far as drones and missile launches, I think the capabilities of the Iranians are severely degraded. They may try against our facilities in the Middle East. I'm not sure it'll work out. I am more concerned about the operatives inside the United States, and we have to remember that the Iranians had generously penetrated the United States government. You have the Rob Malley faction that was pervasive in not just inside the White House, but at State Department, in the intelligence community. You had Asif Rahman, the CIA officer, who within minutes of receiving the Israeli plans last year, immediately handed them to Iran. But there's many more, and I think that really, and I have immense respect for Tulsi Gabbard and the entire team, but she does not yet have her own appointed chief of counterintelligence, and we have just barely begun to clean house. So I think at the DNI, so I think we got a deep state problem. But we have massive Iranian penetration of inside the U.S., and I think that's the greater concern. I mean, even at the FAA, there was an arrest of a person who was working on FAA air traffic control systems who had been a member of the IRGC. how in the world did we get a former member of the IRGC turning the screwdriver on FAA air traffic control system? This means he had access to all the special sensitive air traffic movements, including, at that time, candidate Trump.
If you're just tuning in, folks, we're listening to Colonel John Mills on the Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back.
Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Roger Stone.
In these turbulent economic times, with the Iranians threatening now to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, from which almost a quarter of the world's energy flows, which could drive oil to $130 a barrel, and the price per gallon as high as $7 a gallon. With the Federal Reserve absolutely refusing to cut rates despite the fact that the inflation rate is historically low, with Congress refusing to codify the cuts in waste, fraud, and outrageous spending by the U.S. government, now is the time to protect your future. Now is the time to protect your retirement, and to do so with the strength of gold. Right now, you can convert all or part of your cash savings, your IRA, or your 401k to gold or silver. And the folks to do it are the folks at the Colonial Metals Group. Go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone or go to freegoldguide.com and find out exactly how. You'll be glad you did.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states, and MLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
In golf, precision is everything, on and off the course. PGA of America chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business for smooth operations and seamless transactions. Together, we enhance ticketing and concessions for better fan experiences from gate to green. This is pro-level efficiency. This is PGA of America with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Colonel John Mills, former Director of Cybersecurity Policy Strategy and International Affairs at the U.S. Department of Defense. Colonel Mills is the author of a very lively Substack. It's at Colonel R.E.T. John, Colonel R.E.T., that's for retired, John. Hopefully he will be unretired and serving his nation again soon. But go to Substack.com and check out his Substack. I highly recommend that you subscribe. This is my go-to stop when I want to know what's going on internationally and on military affairs. I cannot commend it to you highly enough. Colonel Mills, we were talking about the Chinese, and of course Iran is I would say almost a proxy for the Chinese. The Chinese get most of their petroleum there. They're also allies of the Russians. Specifically, how do the Chinese and the Russians react to this courageous assault by President Donald Trump to protect America?
Well, let's take Russia first. Russia would not be in the Ukraine war if it wasn't for the war material that Iranian factories make, much of which is actually Chinese product. And the tooling comes from China. So Iran is a huge provider of war material to Russia. So that's huge. For China, I think you have to list out all the Chinese proxies in their worldwide campaign to take out America. And China's been at war with America since 1999's statement on unrestricted warfare against the West. But the proxies are Russia, North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, South Africa, and Pakistan. Now, I put in Pakistan. I have now been contacted by the Pakistani embassy. They seem to be interested in my comments on that, and all I can say for Pakistan, if you're on the American camp, start acting like it. That's as simple as that. This is huge because Iran is a absolute state sponsor of terror, the largest in the world. Thousands of Americans have died since the bombing of our embassy and the Marine barracks in 1983 in Beirut. That was all because of Iran. Iran has been waging a war against us, whether we like it or not. This was not about a forever war. This was not about starting a war, but so Iran is a huge proxy in the Middle East. October 7th was all about Iran, who did this on behalf of China. So China loses a proxy. China loses a huge amount of their energy import, and China has to import 50% of their energy. They do not have their own energy. So this is a huge loss, and if the regime collapses, it has nothing to do with American action, has nothing to do with the bombing. If the Iranian people decide to rise up and change regimes, I think it only could possibly get better. I was in the two Gulf Wars, Gulf War I, Gulf War II. Now, we came in, we caused mayhem, and we did nothing, and we left, and we got zero out of it. Guess who filled the vacuum? Iran. Well, with the Iranian regime gone, I think things will only get better. The Persians have a wonderful historic history of being well-educated, wealthy, prosperous, and I think the days of Cyrus the Great are returning for Iran once they rid themselves of the regime of the IRGC, the mullahs, and the president. They're a thug regime, and they're total proxy of China.
I want to focus on this question of the Strait of Hormuz, of which almost a quarter of the world's energy flows. I read last night that there were 50 Iranian ships cruising towards the strait. Why can't the U.S., maybe this is a naive question, why can't the U.S. completely disable their Navy? Reagan certainly did it with the Iraqis. How difficult could that actually be?
Well, I don't think it would be difficult. We do have a challenge. Our Navy is struggling. Our Navy is a pittance of what it was during the Reagan years, and we need a couple of strong years under Trump, the third term of Trump, to rebuild our Navy. So we are a little limited in capacity. Now, it is interesting that both Israel and the United States have essentially not attacked the ports, because you attack those ports, you knock out the oil exporting infrastructure. That brings Iran to an immediate halt. But yeah, it is. We could, if required, we could really fire them up real good. We just have a lot of challenges. We need to get our Navy back on track and back to the proper size and resourcing it needs to be.
All right, so final question, the possibility of attacks on U.S. bases or interests or assets in the Middle East. I think we covered the very real danger here in the United States, although I was happy to see an announcement by FBI Director Kash Patel that they are monitoring the known cells. What do you think? We got about a minute and a few seconds. What do you think happens in the region? Do we see a counterattack beyond the counterattack on Israel last night? Do we see an attack on U.S. interests, or are the Iranians afraid to do that?
I think, frankly, the Iranians are out of gas, are largely out of gas. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it's unlikely. Iran was largely using three proxies: Hamas, the Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Hamas and Hezbollah are essentially gone, and the Houthis still viable but severely degraded. So Iran is essentially out of resources, and China is flying an airlift into Iran. Don't know what's going on there, but Russia's kind of backed off. I think Iran is really weakened at this point in time. I'm not sure how much they can do regionally.
All right, I want to thank our guest, Colonel John Mills, and urge you to stay with us here on The Roger Stone Show.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. How can you free up your team from time-consuming office tasks? Amazon Business empowers leaders to not only streamline purchasing, but better support their teams so they can focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future. Learn more about the technology, insights, and support available at amazonbusiness.com.
Your burger is served, and this is our finest Pepsi Zero Sugar. Its sweet profile perfectly balances the savory notes of your burger.
That is one perfect combination. Burgers deserve Pepsi.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back on the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Here we talk politics, news, history, style, food, but politics is in my blood. I think if you cut me, I'd bleed politics. Joining me now is one of the very best investigative journalists in the country today, Sean Trejo, who has focused on Latin American politics, specifically the illegal drug trade and the migrant crisis, joins us today on the Roger Stone Show with a very special focus on Honduras. Both Shane Trejo and I have written extensively about the situation in Honduras, and that seems to have upset certain Honduran socialists. So, Shane, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Happy to be here.
So let's start from the beginning. Can you explain who Juan Orlando Hernandez is and exactly what happened to him?
Absolutely. So Juan Orlando Hernandez, or JOH as he's called, was the former president of Honduras, elected to 2 terms. He was very much a pro-Trump president. He worked closely with Trump to stop the flow of drugs and stop the flow of migrants coming up to the U.S. southern border. It's been proven that the flow of drugs was slowed during his tenure, and he actually signed the extradition treaty with the United States so drug criminals could be prosecuted more easily, and led landmark conservative reforms in Honduras to bring in Western capital and open up more jobs. At the time, he was considered Latin America's top ally of the Trump administration. This was kind of before Bukele in El Salvador and Milei in Argentina. So JOH was a forerunner to those sort of leaders. But then it completely turned. Once Biden became in office, he was indicted by the Biden administration as soon as his successor, Xiomara Castro, far leftist aligned with Maduro in Venezuela. She took over, and then JOH was extradited as part of the Biden administration's effort to crush the rise of freedom in Latin America. And then JOH was put up for trial, and they used the unproven testimony compelled by the DEA of the people that JOH cracked down on, the drug criminals he helped put in jail. They gave the unproven testimony in order to put him behind bars and unfortunately successfully railroad him and get the conviction against JOH. So this whole situation has really hurt the people of Honduras, and it also is hurting us because it means more flow of drugs, more migrants coming up to the U.S. southern border. So it's had very negative ramifications for the Americas.
So in other words, just to put it in the common parlance, they framed Juan Orlando Hernandez. And in his trial, they used to testify against him federal informants and the very criminals that he had put away for drug trafficking. Sounds very, very Biden-esque to me. The kind of thing they tried to do to President Donald Trump in their tsunami of lawfare against him. It's interesting that when we just question them or their tactics in their most recent election, they go out of their mind, calling us colonialists, saying that we're the ones who are anti-freedom, claiming that we want Honduras to be a military base for the United States. The overreaction of these people is really extraordinary.
It certainly is, and then you see the Biden regime getting involved in Honduran affairs, and then they helped get rid of JOH, which strengthened Xiomara Castro, the leftist who's now in power, and then she has her own drug-related things that are going on with her administration. Her brother-in-law, the former Secretary of Congress, Carlos Zelaya, he was caught speaking about drug money that had been received by his brother, Mel Zelaya, former president of Honduras. They referenced an alleged $500,000 that Mel Zelaya had received in bribe money from the cartels. So they were caught talking to traffickers about this. And the traffickers on the hidden camera video agreed to put together $650,000 for Carlos Zelaya to ensure his compliance with what they wanted to do, keep trafficking. And Carlos Zelaya said half must go to the commander, quote unquote, meaning his brother, with the rest of the drug money going into the coffers of the Libre Party that Xiomara Castro represents. So the entire operation was fueled by drug money from the start, but that is who the Biden regime put in power in Honduras because they wanted to frame JOH, they wanted to put him behind bars, they wanted to send a message to all of Latin America that you will not be free. We're going to have these, tin pot dictator tyrants in power there. You'll be impoverished. You'll have no chance of ever rising up and having a better life. But it's better for the globalists because the spigot of migrants won't be stopped, and we want to overrun all these different Western countries with migrants because we believe that when the demographics change, the socialists and the Democrats will be able to keep power, and that is their agenda. And it's clear that agenda does not help America, the United States, but it also doesn't help places like Honduras too, because they're living under, they're in the yoke of socialist tyranny, and the United States has contributed to that, and that's not going to make a country like Honduras like us anymore. But we do have the chance now to remedy this with elections coming up in November in Honduras.
Yeah, I can tell you that Xiomara Castro should not sleep well at night. I've written a formal letter to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, to the acting head of the DEA, and to FBI Director Kash Patel, urging him to investigate the drug activities of Xiomara Castro and her government in efforts to get a warrant for her arrest because she is epically corrupt. You just cited the evidence, and I think that's the tip of the iceberg. We're not going to stop. We're not going to go away. In fact, the most recent piece that you and I wrote, I blast emailed that to 750,000 journalists in this hemisphere. People need to know the Honduran regime is epically corrupt. They're up to their nose in drug dealing. They're also a siphon for illegal immigration. The more they complain about your reporting, the more we're going to spread it. This is kind of typical of the Biden administration. The tactics here were the same exact tactics they tried to use against Donald Trump. Last week, in a piece that we wrote together, I urged President Trump to pardon the former president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, I thought that the commies were going to lose their minds.
And from what I've seen, they did. It's a lot of anger from the communists, particularly in Latin America, and a lot of the biased left-wing media reports. They're very angry, but it's resonating among the people. On TikTok and on social media, there's a lot of clamor for freeing JOH, and with President Trump in office, he's issued many great pardons that I don't think any other president would have considered. We had Russ Ulbricht, Silk Road proprietor. He was freed by President Trump. Sheriff Scott Jenkins as well, and many others. So, the pardon attorney for President Trump, Ed Martin, he had a great post on X where he said, no MAGA left behind. We cannot leave anyone who is MAGA behind and let them, rot behind bars because of, biased and politically motivated lawfare that was waged against them. And JOH is certainly, among them. He was a Trump partner. He worked closely with Trump. They appeared in public together, and Trump praised him and what he was doing in Honduras. So he was a great partner of the administration. And so it's not just the right thing to do, but it would also drive a stake through the heart of the propaganda from Xiomara Castro and the Libre Party heading into elections in November. She said she was, I'm going to clean up the country from, JOH and et cetera, but, a pardon of JOH would delegitimize the entire basis of her campaign and her party, and put her, on the defensive, and put her party on the defensive. This, and the wannabe Maduros of Honduras, they would be ousted, and then that would free up Honduras to join El Salvador and Argentina as nations that are undergoing cultural and economic renaissance in Latin America. And that's what the people want down there. I've traveled down there a couple of times, met with a lot of different people. And they want to make their country great again. And, this would be a way, freeing JOH would be a way to help with that without, firing a single bomb or a bullet or getting involved, militarily, which is what has been done throughout the U.S. for the past many decades. This would be a very easy and moral way to make sure that the people of Honduras are that much closer to getting the freedom that they want and deserve.
All right, if you're just tuning in, this is the Roger Stone Show. We're talking to Shane Trejo, investigative journalist par excellence, and we'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
Hi, welcome to IKEA.
This is my college campus.
Correct, but I see you're on IKEA.com ordering some college items.
My daughter's room is pretty bare. We need a lamp, some comfy pillows, her favorite stuffy.
Dad! With pickup options, we've got what you need to conveniently order IKEA. Literally anywhere.
Sweet. More time for gaming.
And studying. Wait, where are you going now?
Have to show the ultimate Frisbee team how easy it is to order from IKEA. Get IKEA whenever, wherever, however you want. Choose from thousands of pickup locations, affordable delivery options, and more.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back. We're talking to Shane Trejo, one of the very best investigative journalists working in the country today. I want to change for a moment to domestic politics. Shane, I'm interested in your assessment of the No Kings demonstration. I guess it was last weekend. Obviously, if you looked at the crowd, the No Kings part did not include Burger King, because I haven't seen this many corpulent women protesting in my long political career. I think this series of demonstrations across the country was an amazing dud. First, there's the hypocrisy of people who nominated a candidate for president with no Democratic input whatsoever. No, somebody who did not garner a single vote in a Democrat primary or caucus or convention. Someone that Nancy Pelosi and the Clintons and the Obamas chose behind closed doors, Kamala Harris. Although as a candidate, she wasn't much of a queen. But them insisting that Trump was a king, this thing was a big old flopperoo, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And, you got to think there's a lot of resources that were thrown into it. The Soros astroturfing, all these different NGOs and nonprofits, their network really, put a lot of effort into promoting this so that it could be the big show against President Trump. They're trying to tap into that Antifa, Black Lives Matter energy of 2020, but it's just not there. Their people are deflated. They're demoralized. They know that the left knows that, they were, sold out by Biden as well, that they were sold a bill of goods and everything that, all the different lies that they were told, it takes its toll. And the victory of Trump, the political comeback of Trump was a demoralizing death blow to this protest movement. So they can't gin up the hatred like they used to against President Trump. They're deflated, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better for the Democrats. I think more and more you're going to see the far left extremists of the left. They're going to be setting their sights at the Democrat Party establishment itself, and we're going to see more of a civil war than these people going after Trump for being a dictator or a king or whatever. And it's also, so ridiculous that they don't want kings, but they wanted Joe Biden to go after all the J6ers. They wanted Biden to throw Trump in prison and take all these ridiculous, unconstitutional powers. So it did not resonate with the broader public because of the hypocrisy, and it didn't even resonate with the far leftists who just can't get back into it, just can't get ginned up like they used to because of how bad the Democrats and the left have been in recent years.
I also think it's significant that the No Kings demonstrations happened post-Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, Donald Trump demonstrated he was not going to make the error that was made in 2020. So if Antifa and BLM foster violence, if they throw rocks and bottles and concrete and baggies of feces and urine at law enforcement agents, including agents, they're going to get answered by the National Guard and by the U.S. Marines. He will not brook any violence. I think he showed that in Los Angeles. And had violence broken out around the so-called No Kings demonstrations, I think he would have moved aggressively in that regard. This is a battle-hardened Donald Trump we have now. This is a much wiser Donald Trump we have now. The New York City Democrat primary will be an important indicator. I'm not a giant fan of Andrew Cuomo, but I do think he's sane. I think he actually still believes in America. He's not a socialist. But if Zohan Mamdani wins, that'll be a very bad sign for the Democrat Party. It will mean that the Democrat Party, the party of John F. Kennedy, the party of Harry Truman, that party is in fact dead. All right, I want to thank my guest, Shane Trejo. We'll be right back with Bill Pulte. He's the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. He's going to tell us why the Federal Reserve must cut interest rates now. Don't go away.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
My name is Lily, and I've had hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, for years. I finally found some relief since taking Cosentyx. Relief means I can show up more.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. On March 14th, 2025, William J. Pulte was sworn in as the 5th director of the U.S. Federal Housing and Finance Administration following his nomination to that position by President Donald Trump. He was confirmed on a bipartisan vote by the U.S. Senate. Now, in this important role, Bill Pulte oversees Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the Federal Home Loan Banks. So it is a crucial position in terms of Donald Trump's stated goal of making housing more affordable and more accessible. We're honored to have Bill Pulte join us on the Roger Stone Show today. Bill, welcome.
Thank you, Roger. Always good talking to you.
So you can't turn on a television or a computer this week, whether it's CNBC or Fox or The Hill. You have been very vocal in calling on Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell to cut interest rates. With inflation at 2%, how does Powell, whom I must point out is not an economist, he's a lawyer, and I think incredibly political, how does he justify keeping interest rates at 4.5%?
Well, his time has come. He's got to go. Enough is enough. This guy has had his day. He's done too much damage. He continues to do too much damage. I mean, we all know this guy from COVID, and then Biden renominated him. I mean, this guy is just a disaster. He's a mess, and he needs to go. You know, President Trump has so much momentum right now in this country. You know, he has the economy rearing to go, but we have this guy, Jerome Powell, who is just holding it back. And frankly, Roger, I think that his hate for President Trump, unfortunately, is the reason that he's not lowering the rates. You bring up a great point. If rates are at 4.5% and inflation is at 2%, why is he punishing? Why is he punishing the average American? And it only leaves you with one thing, which is that he hates him. He hates the president, and he doesn't understand the plight of Americans who have to deal with the ramifications of his terrible, terrible policy.
Yeah, it's interesting. The president, in a social media posting last night, called him a total and complete moron. Very typical of Donald Trump's tendency for understatement. What's ironic here, of course, is that Powell keeps saying he doesn't have enough data to justify a rate cut. Yet all the data he's looking at is outdated. The interest rate, I should say the inflation rate, is what it is. They fear a Trump boom. That's what this is really about.
Correct. They fear it, and they fear it going into the midterms and stuff like this. But look, this is supposed to be an apolitical position. This is supposed to be like the economy. This is supposed to be providing for Americans. Why all of a sudden now does he say that he has no data? And why all of a sudden now is he making these political decisions? I mean, Roger, they cut, as you know, they cut right before the election to help Biden, many people say. And now you've got a situation where, you know, they literally have data that says that they need to lower, and they're not doing it. So you'll be seeing some things come out this week from me, which is going to probably, get some more attention in terms of calling this gentleman out or this guy out. because this has just gone on for too long, and American homeowners are suffering. And as you know, I oversee Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and we have a very good pulse on the American economy and a very good pulse on the American homeowners. And Americans just can't take this any longer. They just can't take it.
Yeah, I saw you point out in one of the many interviews you gave last week, which I think were incredibly effective. It's not just the effect on housing. It's the effect on auto loans, credit cards, as well as mortgages. Powell is willfully and politically holding back the entire economy. What would an interest rate cut by Powell, what would be the effect on the housing market alone?
Well, you'd see great movement. You'd see people being able to afford homes. You know, Roger, people went from 3% mortgages, you know, they had 3% was their cost on mortgages in President Trump's first term, to now, after 4 years of disastrous Obama, I meant to say Biden, but it's the same thing almost in so many ways. It's 7% mortgages. So your affordability has gone through the toilet in terms of with Biden. I mean, you can't even afford a home in this country because of Biden the last 4 years. And so to your point, if we were able to get lower rates, you'd start to see affordability come back into play, and people would be able to finally afford the American dream again. And we are going to restore the American dream in President Trump's America. And frankly, we just need to get Jerome Powell out of the way so that way Americans can afford this great thing that we call the American dream once again.
You know, Bill, I really think you are getting under Powell's skin. I was happy to see the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, and also great friend of this show, Senator Tommy Tuberville, echoing your call for Powell to resign. If the president can't fire him, and it's not clear to me whether he has the authority to fire him. I hear different opinions on that. But if he can't fire him, then frankly, Powell should step down. He should simply resign. I noticed that he announced a dozen speaking engagements over the next week. So I think the criticism is getting to him. Look,
I agree. I think it's very much getting to him.
Yeah, Powell's a lawyer, not an economist. Donald Trump is a legendary builder, and you're a member of one of America's great home building families. I'm sorry, but I have a feeling that President Trump and you have a much better idea on how to handle interest rates than Jerome Powell and his completely politicized agenda. It is obvious who's acting politically and who isn't. Let's turn, if we may, to the big, beautiful bill. I think many Americans really don't understand the full importance in terms of passing this legislation. Is it perfect? No, it is not perfect. But it's also not in its final form. It's going to get changed. It's going to get changed in the Senate. It's going to get changed in conference. But the important aspects to this, to me, are the 68% tax cut that was initiated under President Donald Trump in his first term. Failure to approve the big, beautiful bill would give Americans the greatest single tax increase in our history. I'm not sure enough people know that.
Well, not only that, but President Trump won a historic mandate in this election based on many of the tenets of the bill. So the American people have given him the mandate to do this, and now it needs to happen. And whether, like you said, whether it's Powell or whether it's some of these obstructionist Democrats, they need to look at the facts and the reality of the matter, which is that President Trump is overwhelmingly popular with the American people. He won a mandate, and look, the bill needs to pass, and I'm very confident, frankly, that with the support that he has in both the House and the Senate, it will get done. But, you know, these are political times, and you know it better than me, having been in politics your whole life.
Well, look, the American people always rally to a wartime president. I said at the top of the show that I'm not second-guessing the President of the United States. Yeah, my history is as an anti-interventionist Republican, but that means I don't want endless foreign war where our inherent national interests are not even remotely clear. That's not what we have here. There are no boots on the ground. There's no long-term plan to invade Iran. This was a necessary surgical strike to protect the very narrow interests, not just of Israel, but of all our allies in the region, as well as the United States. It's also in my view, kind of a brushback to the Chinese in case they have any thoughts about Taiwan. America's back because Donald Trump is our president. Otherwise, the nation's decline would just continue. And the cut in interest rates by the Fed, combined with the renewed federal tax cuts, and a emphasis on cutting regulation in this administration, really does put us on the cusp of a golden age, doesn't it, Bill?
It really does. And I tell you this, we're going to look back, I think, in 2, 3, 4 years when President Trump is done with his work, and we're going to say this is one of the best economies, if not the best ever in the history of the world, what we're about to see. But frankly, President Trump has a lot that he has to clean up from the last 4 years. But there's nobody better for the job, and we're working very hard at it. I mean, I'll just tell you in the housing market in particular, Roger, because Fed Chair Powell was too late and he raised the rates too quickly and too late, you had people trapped in these low-interest loans in their homes, Roger. And so now nobody wants to sell their existing homes because they have these low mortgages. So you're not getting any inventory turns. You're not getting any churn in terms of people buying and selling their homes. And so it's really been a disaster. But I'm very confident that we have the president, we have the right president, we have the right team, and we're going to reverse the last 4 years of, frankly, this hell that they created in the housing market.
All right, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to William J. Bill Pulte. He is the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. This week he's been an outspoken advocate for Jerome Powell either cutting interest rates based on the historically low inflation rate or stepping down, resigning, which I think is a great idea. You can't turn on the media this week without getting hot and cold running Pulte. We're honored to have him here on the Roger Stone Show. We're going to continue to talk about the Trump economy when we get back on the other side. So, folks, whatever you do, we got a few more minutes with Bill Pulte. Please don't touch that dial.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back at the Roger Stone Show here at the Red Apple Audio Networks. We're talking to Bill Pulte, who is the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. Before his appointment, Bill Pulte had a long-standing career in home building, housing products, and community development. 2011, Bill Pulte founded Pulte Capital Partners, an investment firm that focuses on building and housing projects. He also served on the board of Pulte Homes, one of the most respected home builders in the country, a Fortune 500 company. But beyond business, Bill is also recognized for his philanthropic activities. He founded the Blight Authority, a nonprofit organization that was dedicated to removing urban blight in Detroit, Michigan, St. Louis, Missouri, and Pontiac, Michigan. So Bill Pulte is one who's had an enormous success in America, but he also has given back, in my opinion. He is one of President Trump's very best appointments. And, Bill, you have been very outspoken this week in calling out Jerome Powell, the ultra-politicized chairman of the Federal Reserve, who seems to be standing in the way of what could be the greatest single economic boom in American history, the Trump boom. It really is time for this guy to step aside. I don't understand why he doesn't get the picture.
It really is. And the arrogance that this guy has is quite unbelievable, Roger. You know, it's like, can you imagine going to somebody's house for dinner, or worse, having somebody win an election by a huge mandate, in the case President Trump, and you're sitting there and you're working for this guy, or supposed to be working for this guy. Nobody wants you there. Nobody wants Jerome Powell there anymore, from what I can tell, because of, frankly, his arrogant attitude that he's had all of these years. And now he sits there and he basically says, no, I'm not lowering rates. And instead of doing what he usually says that he does, which is, oh, I'm data-driven, he's provided no data. And, Roger, we've got a situation now where you have these rates at 4.5% and inflation is at 2%. President Trump has completely crushed inflation. But President Trump can control inflation, or has been able to influence it at least, Whereas Jerome Powell, he is the one who sets the rates. And so it's a very, very discomforting fact, and that's why I've called for Jerome Powell's resignation, and I will continue to do so. And I'm very excited and very happy that, there is a lot of momentum for this, because the American dream needs to be restored in this country. And if we have guys like Jerome Powell in this country who are sitting there and doing things for what I believe to be political reasons, that is not good, and it needs to stop, and it needs to stop now.
Yeah, Barry Habib, who I look to as one of the country's leading authorities on both housing and mortgages, a true economic guru, a visionary in this area, refers to the chairman as too late Powell because of this great tendency to try to use antiquated and outdated data to justify his current position. I think it's pretty clear. Inflation, checked this morning, was at 2%. Powell seemed, and his colleagues, I should say, seemed very eager to help try to manipulate the economy through interest rate cuts to try to reelect Joe Biden. But now when they accuse the president of acting politically because he wants a rate cut to get this economy really cooking, they accuse him of the one playing politics when they're the ones playing politics.
Yes, and President Trump doesn't have an election coming up. He doesn't have anything other than wanting to do what's in the best interest of the American people. And he was given a mandate. I mean, I don't know about you, but on November 6th, President Trump I saw him as being the one who was elected on TV, not Jerome Powell. And, he won all these states. He won Florida. He won all these states, Ohio, you name it, he won it. 312 electoral votes. Jerome Powell got none. And I just see from my perspective, and this is just my own opinion, but I see somebody who's incredibly disrespectful to the President of the United States and Jerome Powell, and he needs to resign. And, what's amazing, Roger, is that somebody can have this much so-called authority, and you mentioned there's a whole bunch of legal questions around that and certain things regarding that. But I can't believe that somebody like Jerome Powell can cost us trillions and trillions of dollars. And then on top of that, Roger, in addition to costing us trillions of dollars, think about the average person who has, credit cards, who is trying to make their way in life, whether starting their own business or getting a new job or trying to have a family. Where is the empathy that Jerome Powell has for that? And this is one of the biggest criticisms that people have of Washington, D.C., and I'm very sensitive to it now that I'm working in Washington, D.C., is, how do you make sure that when you go to D.C., you don't lose your sense of touch, your sense of sensibility with the American people? And it just seems to me, Roger, that this guy is totally ignoring the struggles of the American people, and he's doing it all out of vindictive rage towards the president. That's what it appears to me.
No, I think you're exactly right. It says so when I see people refer to Donald Trump as a politician, I don't think he'll ever be a politician. He's the leader of a political movement, a reform movement. But as I think the Iranians just learned, he's a man who says what he means and means what he says. And he's about business. He's about commerce over chaos. You summed this up better than anybody else the other day when you said that by keeping interest rates high, Jerome Powell is trapping homeowners in low-rate mortgages, choking off existing home sales, and directly fueling the current housing supply crisis. I'm not sure how this can get much clearer. When does Powell's current term end? How soon can we be rid of this man President Donald Trump refers to in an understatement as a total and complete moron?
Well, it looks like it's going to be early next year, but we'll see. We'll see what the president decides to do. It's entirely up to the president what it is that he's looking at doing. I'll say this. I do think, though, that for the sake of the country, Jerome Powell needs to resign, and he needs to resign now. Enough damage has occurred. We can't, it's almost too late. I mean, there's so much damage that has occurred, in my opinion, as a result of this guy. And the arrogance is just, it's nauseating to me that this guy can't read the room. You're always taught as a kid, right, when you're growing up and when you're in business and stuff, or when you're in any type of negotiation or just any life event, read the room. And this guy needs to read the room, and he needs to exit stage left for the sake of the country and for the sake of this president's, mandate that he was given. This president was given a historic mandate and needs to be given a shot, and we can't have people like Jerome Powell standing in the way.
What an extraordinary opportunity. Just think, if we could both pass the big, beautiful bill, the largest tax cut across the board on the American people, plus doing away with the tax on tips, the tax on Social Security. At the same time, we got an interest rate cut. We really would enter the golden age, an age of unprecedented prosperity for the American people. One of those working closely with President Donald Trump to make sure that is reality. Bill Pulte, the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, who has been very clear this week about the absolute necessity of Jerome Powell either cutting interest rates on the working families of America or stepping down. Bill Pulte, thank you so much for joining us today on the Roger Stone Show. That's it for us today, folks. Until next Sunday, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?